When you think of the great empire of Egypt, you may think of the great architectural achievements like the Sphinx or the pyramids of Giza, or the deeply rooted Egyptian mythology like Ra, Anubis, Osiris, and Horus, or the great pharaohs of the kingdom like Khufu, Tutankhamun, Ramses II, and the most well-known, Cleopatra. Egypt is one of the oldest civilizations ever, with estimates going back to before 3100 BCE. Their kingdom was built along the Nile River that allowed for farming and irrigation long before other cultures had any idea what it was. With a kingdom this old, it is no surprise that there are some amazing stories to come out of this. This is just one of those stories, the story of Cleopatra. Cleopatra was born in 69 BCE in Alexandria, Egypt. She was the daughter of King Ptolemy XII, Altales. Growing up, she styled herself as the goddess Isis, the goddess of maternity, connecting with the dead, and curing the sick's ailments. She stunned the masses with her alarming beauty and prominent nose. When her father died, the throne was passed on to be shared by her and her brother, Ptolemy XIII. As the older sibling, she was the dominant leader, but only after 3 years after her father died, she was forced to flee her own country and the throne to Syria, where she met Julius Caesar and they became lovers. In combined forces, she was able to return to the throne, and her brother fled only to mysteriously drown in the Nile River.
The first love of Cleopatra's was with Julius Caesar between the years 48 BC and 47 BC. The two met because of their disagreement between Cleopatra and her brother, Ptolemy, who would take the throne. Cleopatra fled to Syria, created an army to take down her brother. The murder of the Roman general Pompey came the arrival of Caesar, who brought temporary peace. Cleopatra used Caesar for Roman support to gain more stable ruling. The two became lovers and spent the winter in Alexandria together. In June of 47 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to her first child, Ptolemy Caesar, or Little Caesar, but it is not confirmed that Julius Caesar was the father. After the murder of Julius Caesar in 44 BC came Mark Antony, the next lover of Cleopatra. Mark Antony, the ruler of Rome's eastern territories, had Cleopatra explain the role that the Egyptian territories played. Cleopatra seduced Antony, giving him lush gifts and wearing extravagant clothing that captivated Mark Antony. Forgetting his wife, Antony saw Cleopatra not as a protected sovereign, but as an independent monarch. After this, they formed a society which members lived as a debauchery, who dedicated to the cult of the mystical god Dinos. Cleopatra gave birth to twins in 40 BC. Antony had left to Alexandria at the time, and then Antony returned in the year 34 BC.
Cleopatra originally earned her place as pharaoh after she promised to pay back Rome for their debts and killing of Pompey. While Caesar placed Cleopatra on the throne, she brought years of prosperity and peace to Egypt. Even after Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, Cleopatra was able to hold her throne by siding with Mark Antony, who was the new ruler of Rome. She held this power again by becoming Antony's lover. At this point in her rule, Cleopatra was able to accomplish a lot, such as stabilizing Egypt's economy, ruling a bureaucracy, and ridding of corruption between priests and evils. Cleopatra opened the grain supply to her people, as well as rid of many taxes, all while keeping stability and independence. However, the Roman Senate did not see Cleopatra's accomplishments like Mark Antony did. Instead, they saw a woman who kept their leaders away from home. Because of this, the Roman Senate declared war on Cleopatra, to which her army retracted in fear. Unfortunately, after hearing the supposed death of Cleopatra, Mark Antony killed himself, leaving it easy for Rome to grab control of Egypt from Cleopatra. Afraid of being dragged through the streets of Rome, Cleopatra ended up killing herself with a poisonous snake called an asp.
After Cleopatra was forced out of Egypt and into Syria, Julius Caesar, the Roman politician, aided her by smuggling her back into Egypt. Ptolemy XIII and Caesar's forces then went into a 4-month war because of the unpaid debts credited by Auletes. Roman reinforcements arrived, winning the war and forcing Ptolemy XIII to flee, when he then drowned in the Nile River. Caesar restored power to Cleopatra and her younger brother, who was said to have been killed under the command of Cleopatra. Cleopatra gave birth to a son around the time of 47 BC, and Caesar was killed 3 years later in 44 BC. A civil war then began between Caesar's allies, including Mark Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus, against Caesar's assassins. Both sides requested assistance from Cleopatra, which resulted in 4 Roman legions given to support Caesar's allies. In 42 BC, Caesar's assassins were defeated and the power of Rome was divided between Antony and Octavian. Soon after, Antony called Cleopatra over to discuss her role after Caesar's death. Antony, charmed by her presence, agreed to protect Egypt and Cleopatra's rule, to support the removal of her sister and rival, and decided to leave his wife to follow her to Egypt. To prove his loyalty to Octavian, he later married Octavia. He met yet again with Cleopatra and returned much of Egypt in exchange for military funds. He left his wife yet again to join Cleopatra and awarded each of their children with land. This began a propaganda war with Octavian, where the Roman Senate took much of Antony's titles and war was declared on Cleopatra. In 31 BC, Cleopatra's forces were beaten and taken over by Rome to later on become Roman Egypt.